Hello, this is Mark Wildman of Wildman Athletica here with the great Summer Huntington of
FlowShala and Steel Mace Vinyasa.
And today I'm going to ask her questions. I am here at FlowShala doing part of their instructor training. I am an instructor for them, but I am also taking the instructor training because a good coach needs a better coach. So I am here to ask her questions. We use language differently. I am going to ask her to define some terms so that if I start saying them, you understand them. In the training we are doing currently, there are 3 phases in the program design, correct? Could you elucidate those for us?
Sure. So we have prime, condition, and flow.
Will you explain what prime is in like middling to great detail?
Sure. So prime is the first section of your either class or your flow-based class, vinyasa-based class. So we really specialize in teaching both yogis and non-yogis how to move mindfully. So in the prime section, think of it as like your mobility drills, but they're more than just standing, doing wrist mobility, neck mobility, isolated. You're integrating some asana with the joint mobility. So for example, if I was to just do chest expansion standing from mountain pose to gunslinger, I'm inserting that into some form of a kneeling lunge, for example. So I'm inserting the asana or the yoga pose into that drill.
Will you please define asana for people who don't know what asana means?
Asana is just pose, and in the classical practice of yoga, we call them asana. We call them poses.
In martial arts, you would call them stances. In the training world, you would call them footwork drills. It would be like a static lunge or a straight leg static lunge. Those would be like examples of asana. When she says mountain pose, she just means standing up, right?
Yeah, just standing up.
Just standing up. So they use that term differently than say martial arts do. A mountain pose in martial arts is a warrior pose for them. So when you're listening to these conversations, make sure that the language that you're using is tracking. Martial arts have different names for stances than yoga does. Yoga has pretty consistent names because they're all Sanskrit.
You can then flip them all into Sanskrit. I tend to use a lot of the English names for things. So instead of saying Anjayasana, which is the Sanskrit word for kneeling lunge, I just stick to kneeling lunge so that it's more accessible for our...
We'll continue on prime, so joint mobility in position.
So it's joint mobility inserted into a posture of some kind. So you've got your different postures such as down dog, quadruped, kneeling lunge, warrior 2 would be a posture, mountain pose would be a posture, chair pose would be a posture. The purpose of the priming section is to prime the neural pathways for the degrees of freedom that you'll be using in your next phase of the training, which is condition. So I know you guys are not familiar with the words degrees of freedom. So we use this as a lens to look at movement so that we can quickly identify where the person is leaking power, so we can seal up the power leakage and help them become a more proficient athlete and able to harness the full ground reaction force and wield a mace with control and with stability to prevent injury. So we're priming neural pathways, we're mapping it out in the body so that we're going through similar motions that we would with the load later on, and we're overall priming the nervous system for more complexity later on.
So this is very similar to the way I think. I start everybody with standing joint mobility because that's the thing that most people suck at, is just standing up. And then I pick my asana or posture based on asana or posture or stances from martial arts. So I tend to go from standing to my mountain pose, which is a yoga warrior pose. And then from there into skandasana, which we call stretching stance. And we do the same thing, we're just using different language. That is good. When you find coaches who are doing similar concepts but using different words, you can still understand it. The best coaches in the world all do these types of things. They prime the neurological system. They put people in positions that are useful for what they do. I just pick different useful positions because she picks based on yoga and I pick based on violence and farm work.
And not hurting yourself and being in pain.
If you go to a gym and that's not a primary goal, you should kind of like think about that gym a little bit deeper. The main goal is to not be in pain. If people who are in a lot of pain really value that, and I've been in a lot of pain. I've wrecked motorcycles and run over by horses and fallen off of buildings and broken legs. Being not in pain is like a great thing, and I really like it. Thank you to Summer for letting me come here to her fancy, new, much larger space and drop in on her instructor training. You can never stop. And the goal is always to find somebody smarter than you, ask them what they know, and then figure out how to integrate it into your client base.